Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. It's great to see you here again. So, today's guest is Oliver Muller, who is a boxer, chess player, and founder and CEO of Property Card, which is the first global property super app. Welcome, Oliver. Great to have you here.
It's great to be here, Jane. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So in this interview, we're going to talk about what 120,000 chess tactics with a 99.9% percentile rating, and we'll get on to what that means, taught Oliver about life, business, and mastery. And we're also going to discuss Oliver's personal journey as a boxer and what inspired him to launch the Property Card Super App. So we've got lots to talk about today, and I can't wait to get into it with you, Oliver.
Yeah, excited.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your personal history because you do have some very interesting interests and a very interesting background. You're a very rounded type of a guy, aren't you, really?
Thank you. I am. And the reason I've chosen to play boxing and chess, and these are just hobbies of mine. I'm not a professional at them, but I reached very high levels of stats in the chess game, and it's a personal favorite of mine for a reason that it's uh, a very close analogy and replica of life. And there is so much to learn from that game that my eyes were open to some realities in playing that game. And I took it to a level of, well, I reached second rank globally by number of failed attempts. And this is a stat I usually talk about because it's one I'm most proud of. So only one other person has failed at the game as much as I have. And I take pride in this because that was the way I could learn very, very quickly and accumulate as much experience as possible in a short time frame. And this is something I apply to anything that I want mastery in life. And it makes you love rejection and failure, and because you aim for as many fails as possible, as quickly as possible, and that's the fastest way to learn and to rise. And the interesting thing with the game of chess is that you can break it down statistically. Every move, every game you've played, and because it's trying to rank all the players globally, and there's millions of them, there's a lot of statistics in the game, and you can break down where you've gone wrong, and it teaches 100% accountability. That in boxing is games of pure discipline, and they're solo sports where any win or any loss, if you trace back the moves, there's either a good move or a bad move made somewhere that's completely your fault. So the level of there's no emotion in the game. It's completely a rational game, and it teaches complete accountability of the self. And there's a lot of statistics in it which I like. Um, but yeah, something that became very, very clear to me in chess that taught me so much about myself is that the amount of effort required and the amount of discipline required to rise to the 99th percentile and then 99.9 and 99 and 999, because there's a lot of levels out there and it doesn't stop at 99 to go to the next level of 0.9, 0.99, and so on, because it's a competitive world and there's billions of people. So the true top levels, they don't end at the top 1%. And to reach the top levels of anything, what it actually takes to transcend the final, to go at the highest peaks of that mountain at the top, that's where it gets really, really difficult. And I know we spoke once. I found very interesting that your podcast was top 3% in podcasts. And
2.5%.
2.5 now. So, most people might not take much away from that number, but when I first saw that, for me, I was trying to work out how you got to that and what it might take to get to the 1 and so on. I was looking up Joe Rogan and other podcasts to see what they've done that could be replicated and so on. And I've looked up the numbers, the number of podcasts that you've done since inception, because that plays a big part as well. The law of 10,000 hours to get mastery in something. So
Yeah.
you're well on your way to that trajectory, but it gets harder and harder as the steepness increases, and you try to go for those extra decimals. But the game of chess made that very, very clear to me, and to me personally, because everyone has a different style of playing. And when you look into the stats, it shows you your specific stats versus everyone else. And I learned something about myself that I didn't know before, and that was that I fail very quickly at things, and I fail very often, and I have very, very low success rate, but I have so many attempts, and that's how I rise quickly. So I used to consider myself more of a failure in many things, but when I saw the way I play in chess and that my score was rising very, very quickly, statistically, I was reaching very, very high levels, but my success rate was so low. I have a 40% success rate in chess. Some of the top chess players have a 98%. So it taught me something in myself, which was just my style of play is to go for many, many attempts. And that's not necessarily wrong. It's actually a very good thing if you're aware of it and you just keep going for the next one. Because you're failing more and more and more, but at higher and higher levels. So the way the game works is it'll show you a more difficult tactic each time. So I'm still failing at the 40% rate, but they're getting harder and harder and harder. And I'm rising in that process. And that's applicable to many things in life. And yeah.
You know, it certainly is. And as you said, this whole topic of success and failure and how failures lead to success, and how when you master more complicated challenges, it takes you higher up that percentile rankings of anything is such a fascinating topic, really, isn't it? And I know that we've obviously talked before about this, and I just think it is so fascinating. But as you said, the difference between, let's say, okay, talking about podcasting, the top 2.5%, which is where my podcast is at the moment, and the top 1%, it requires a different level of investment for sure, of time, money, and effort. And but the fact that anybody has a podcast that is the top 2.5% is pretty good. But of course, pretty good is not what we are all aiming for. Really, we all want to be really good, don't we? We want to be up there. If we're in business, it pays off, doesn't it, to be up there and amongst the best. And I think that's something that we should all strive for, don't you think?
I completely agree with you. Another thing is you're not competing with anyone else. You're competing with yourself and your
Mhm.
score. So when you wake up in the morning, it's not about 2% is good, or it's arbitrary. It's your score today versus your score tomorrow. So if you're at 2.5 today, you're obviously aiming for 2 in the short term and then 1, and it's never going to end. That's the game. And you've chosen this game and you're going to play until the end. So, but there are so many more levels than people are aware of, and the difficulty rises as it's long-tailed and it gets more and more interesting. But like you said, you have to change your approach. The tactics change, the moves you make change. It's a different set of moves. The people you're up against, your name becomes, your name will start popping up next to some of the other, even the arena you're playing in. Everything changes. It's a new level. It's a new level constantly, and the scenery changes faster and faster as you rise more. So less things become familiar, and you become more and more in the unfamiliar every single day. And that's a good sign that you're moving in that direction. The life levels never end, especially in things that are competitive. Podcasting is a very competitive space. Chess is extremely competitive, and my favorite sport of all is business, and that's the most competitive game there is. So everyone's out to compete with you and take your lunch, and and this is, yeah.
That's true. So before we go on to talk about your property app, which sounds really, really exciting, I'd just like to talk a little bit more about your background. So obviously we know about chess, that chess has been something that's been a lifelong passion of yours. There's boxing. I want to get onto that. In terms of your career history, Oliver, tell us a little bit more about where you come from, because you're a very numbers and statistically orientated guy, aren't you? So what is your background for our viewers and listeners who haven't come across you before?
So I've been obsessed with numbers and math my entire life, and I used to trade derivatives and currencies for a bank, and so I started in the finance world, trading and making money from stocks. And I started very, very young. It was a side hobby of mine, and I was making money in my teens from trading, and this is how I started making money. So my I got very fascinated with the ways to play the market and look for opportunities, and it was all numbers based. And I used to trade based on statistics and charts, and I was always looking at pattern recognition. And
Mm.
I'm an avid reader as well. My favorite topics are business and psychology. I've read every psychology book on Amazon, and I'm very fascinated with human dynamics and how it plays into numbers and math. And so that's what brought me full circle into and to the things I've done. It all always had a human element to it, psychological element, because we're all humans in the end, and our interplay with other humans and the decision making around that is what determines outcomes. Also, I've read a lot of history, and I was fascinated a lot in history by men who left the greatest legacy, and not just the positive but the negative. And I have a very big fascination with two characters in specific who left the most positive and the most negative legacy. And I don't know if we have enough time. We can go into that another podcast maybe. But I looked into it because the decisions those men made. So one is Genghis Khan, and another
Mhm.
one is Nero Caesar. Not very familiar, but he has the worst legacy left by any man in history.
Does
And
he really?
he does. He's the Roman emperor who burnt down Rome, who murdered his mother and his wives, and did everything wrong. And he managed to leave a very long lasting legacy, but in the negative, still left the legacy. And Genghis Khan did the same in the positive. Also killed millions of people, but net positive was a big creationist. He it's said that most of us are descendant of Genghis Khan today. He left thousands of children behind, and the amount of creation that happened on his time, the Mongolian Empire. When you look down to the moves he's done, the series of positive compounding moves was such value creating that it left a mark not just in his time, where he was controlling land mass across the world, but thousands of years later. So when you break down the decisions that a man like that made versus what Nero Caesar made, and you can see the multiplying positive and the multiplying negative. One went from top spot in the world at birth, Nero Caesar, to suicide. So from top to zero, and one went from zero to top. So, and it's down to the series of decisions and moves that they made, a bit like the chessboard, but in life. And it's just very interesting that there's 8 billion people today. Every single one of us has a different brain that
Mhm.
chooses decisions in a different way. And it's those series of moves that your brain will make that will lead you that way versus another person going that way. So I find a lot of fascination in that, and especially that it's completely open. We have free will to change those moves, but you firstly have to be aware that you can make changes and then see the multiplicative effect of those moves. So yeah. So just to answer your question, I do come from a numbers background, statistics, but I have a fascination with people and psychology, and I've tried to read everything I can get my hands on about human nature and try to factor it back in with pattern recognition into making money and statistics.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me because psychology is also about pattern recognition because we tend to be very consistent as humans, and how we do something is often how we do everything, right? So yeah, I do understand the fascination there.
On your point on that line, how you do anything is how you do everything. I just got a tattoo on my neck this week, which is the number 100, and
Ah,
it's exactly that line that you just said. So it's the
ooh,
primary value of my company that I try to instill in every person who works with me, and they sign to this value on day one. How I do anything with you is how I'm going to do everything. So
yes,
big
yes.
believer in that.
Yes, yes. It's so important because, because we are creatures of habit, aren't we? And particularly when it comes to our behavior, there's so many unconscious forces that are driving us to just repeat the same habits, the same behaviors day in, day out, that really we humans are a lot simpler than we would have others believe.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So let's talk about the boxing as well, Oliver, because that's also been very important to you, hasn't it? So what have you learned through boxing and why did you take up boxing and what is it about boxing that you think has contributed to all of these other things that you're involved in?
Boxing is just a hobby for me. I've not done this professionally, but I think it's really important that every child picks up contact physical sport that's a bit defensive and proactive in nature, and something where you can self defend. And it teaches a lot, the sport. Firstly, it's solo sport, so you're on your
Yeah.
own, which is a replica of life. End of the day, you're born into this world on your own, and you exit on the way out on your own as well. It's a solo sport, and it teaches accountability again. And it also teaches that the subtlest things can make huge differences. The thing in boxing is that most people can look like they can box. You can put someone in the ring and they can swing, and the subtlest of differences can make huge, huge outcome differences. If you look at someone like Floyd Mayweather, for instance, who never loses, never lost, and he's very defensive and tactical, very tactical man. But the subtlest of moves that this guy has made have kept him reigning at the top for the longest time, and the purse he's taken because of it just shows that, when you this is one man who's dedicated his life to one thing. On the subject of mastery, he
Yes.
didn't go around saying I'm this and that and that. He's this guy has done two things. He's a boxer and he's the money team. So the TMT logo, which is obsession with money and mastering one thing, boxing, he's done that on repeat for decades. So it teaches something as well, that if you have focus that's just relentless on one thing and you manifest into the universe one outcome, and you do that on repeat for your whole life, you're much better off than trying to master everything. So again, that's what chess taught me, is that what it's actually going to take to reach the top is such a vast amount of effort and consistent compounding that if you really want to reach the top level, you have to, part of strategy is also knowing what not to do. So part of it is knowing what to cancel out of your life. It's the people to cancel, the actions to cancel, the thoughts that are unwanted, the food you shouldn't eat. It's the unwanted things that enter into your mind and space that if you can cancel most of these things out, you're so much further ahead than most people are. And the few things that you're left with, which are your strengths and desires, you have to put a plan of multi-decades to compound forward if you want a chance of reaching the top. And that's what this guy did. And there's never been a boxer that compares to him in terms of tactical accuracy and net worth. So again, but the laser focus on one thing, that's what I respect.
Yeah. And, I mean, you said a number of very interesting things there, but I think one of the things I'd like to pick up on, and because it's something that I've noticed as well, I've been around some very, very successful people in my life, and I've interviewed some very successful people on my podcast who have had really incredible achievements and careers and businesses and made millions, So I've spent time with those people. And one thing that I've noticed, talking about patterns, is that they tend to say no a lot more than a lot of other people that I know. I've
Amazing.
really noticed that. Yeah, it's a really consistent thing. So I think what you were just saying, it really underpins that, how important it is to eliminate, reject, just say no to all those temptations, all those shiny objects, all that pressure from other people, all the internal pressure on us to just do what's enjoyable or do what's kind of easy, really, as opposed to focusing on the stuff that is going to get us results, right? If that's what we want.
What you just said, Jane, is amazing. I'm going to take that as a takeaway. Another thing is no became my favorite word, one of my favorite words. And it's the same with many people who are in sales, or those who experience a lot of rejection and failure, because you get so used to it, you eventually like it in a weird way. And it's also the closest word to yes. Like the flipped word from no is yes, and you've then made a close. So you will hear it a lot, and you have to get used to it. And like you said, one more thing about chess is that what I learned, and I had no idea about this, is that in chess, you want to be as close to 100 as possible, meaning you want to make the perfect move on every attempt, given your scenario and the scenario of your opponent. And statistically, the computer can tell you the best move on the board. And if you make that move every time, it's going to multiply 100 by 100 by 100. You stay at 100. And statistically, at the end of the game, when you get your score, you'll see 100 if you played a perfect game. What you can do, if you're making the wrong moves, you'll make a 98% move, a 90% move. It starts multiplying 0.9, 0.8. And see what happens when you multiply 0.9 by 0.9, you get 0.8. 0.8 by 0.8, you get 0.6. 6, you get 3. You're 2, 3 moves away from 0. So the decay is so fast when you make suboptimal moves. And if these moves are even more suboptimal, it's fewer multiplications to get to 0. So the real game of life isn't to make the craziest, brilliant moves. It's just to cut out all the shitty ones. So even further, when I broke down the stats, because I used to look at every move I would make, I would go back statistically and analyze, and it took so many hours to do this. But the stats of chess would break down your mistakes into 3 types. One is a blunder, one is a mistake, and one is an inaccuracy. A blunder is one that's near fatal. If you make a blunder, it's almost impossible to recover. You're gone. It's like in life, making something so stupid you go to jail for, or you end your life with a very silly mistake. The second one is a mistake. That's clearly a wrong move. There are better moves on the board. It's clearly a mistake, but it's not fatal. You can make a few of them and you can recover. Then there's inaccuracies, which are still not the best move. They're good moves, but there are better moves on the board, so it's considered inaccurate. Means you'll get a 90 for it versus an 80, a 60. And your goal is actually to get every move as close to the perfect one as possible and multiply 100. What happens when you multiply 100 by 100%? You're still at 100. Multiply 100, you're at 100. So if you keep multiplying hundreds, you get 100. Multiply 100 by 99, your net result is lower than 100, lower than 100, and it starts going downwards. So your actual goal in chess is just every move, make the best move and hold to that. So when you watch how most people live their lives, no one's operating in that realm. From the things they eat and the things they drink and the things they consume and watch, and it's mistake after blunder and the multiplication of it has them feeling like they're never making progress in life. They work so hard, but they go backwards. Why? Because they're making so many shitty moves that you can never get ahead with it. You're just multiplying the formula in the wrong direction.
Yeah, multiplying the formula in the wrong direction. I mean, that's really, really important. Sorry, Oliver. You still there?
Yeah.
Something strange happened with my computer. But I was just saying, multiplying the formula in the wrong direction, that is very, very powerful. And it's really something that I'm going to remember because I'm really inspired by this conversation because it just makes you think about what you do and about those habits and about whether they are really hindering your progress or helping it in any area of life, right? Because we've always got to challenge ourselves every day, haven't we? If we want to have a good life, if we want to have a successful business, all of those things that as an entrepreneur, we all want because our business is there to serve our lives, right? We want to have a great life, and that's why we're in business. So those decisions, those micro decisions, they're critical, aren't they?
I completely agree. I mean, do you notice how when people um, lose control of their eating habits and they start to gain weight, it becomes near impossible to get back. And when the skin stretches, even if if you notice people who become obese, even if they lose the weight, the skin is flabby, and there's
Yeah.
certain things when you stretch them in the incorrect direction, it's impossible to get back. And like you said, how you do anything is how you do everything. That person who's eating that way is consuming mental junk as well, and in many areas of his life doing similar inferior decisions, and that just it multiplies all across your life, and just it's a rapid deterioration that becomes hard to control. That's why the obesity rate is 30% plus, anxiety pills over 30%. Porn is the number one thing that's watched in the world. I mean, the amount of garbage in the world is endless, and it's the
Yeah.
number one consumed thing. So again, it's more than anything. People know what the right decisions are. They're just not doing it. Like you said, it's the discipline, not just to know, but it's the discipline to do it. Most people know that junk food is bad. They don't have the willpower, the discipline to be able to do it, and that goes into the next area of your life, and so on. And it's out of hand, and they've lost control.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is, look, we're not humans. I mean, we're not robots, right? We're human. So humans can never be. We can never be like robots. We can never be 100% perfect. We all have our weaknesses and our flaws, and we've got to a certain extent, live our lives with that knowledge that we are imperfect creatures, right?
Right.
But there are things that we can do in our daily lives to, as you said, to challenge those habits that are really not helping us. And if as long as we do that every day, then we are bound to become better or become more successful or become more the person that we were meant to be compared to other people who just live their lives on autopilot.
That's completely true. Again, I think this has relevance what we're saying to me and you, and the targets we're trying to go after, because
Yeah.
when you're trying to go after the 1% and the 0.1%, it's a different mindset that's required for high performance, because the
Yep.
people against you, they're not the average.
Yep. No, that's right.
And every minute spent watching your podcast is taken away from something else. So it's a
Yeah.
decision in itself to watch Jane Baylor
Mm.
versus something else. So again, it's you can live your life however you want. That's the beauty of life. You have free will to play the game however you like. And I think we've been brought together because we have some similar thoughts and some things. But again, I think your show is amazing, and if you were to reach the Rogan level, it's there's a spin and an angle in the market that you have that he doesn't have, and it's those things that need to be found and exploited and doubled down on.
Mm. Yeah, well, I'm inspired now. Joe Rogan, watch out.
He has no chance.
I'm on my way.
He has no chance.
Yeah.
I see that you've lengthened. See that you've lengthened the shows a little bit, and you've added video.
Yeah, so the video is just so important, I think, in terms of building a more holistic um, relationship really with people. So I always use video when I can. It can be difficult for a lot of people, I know, to project themselves on video and to really be that full version of themselves in all their glory, just as they would be if they were speaking to somebody in person, having an in-person conversation or meeting. But I do think it's something that all of us need to master, is that ability to project ourselves on video and actually get across our whole character, our facial expressions, just the people that we are, because although voice is important, it's not everything really, is it?
I completely agree with you. The tonality, how someone conveys themselves, video changes a lot. I prefer
Yeah.
still face to face a lot. I like to do my meetings face to face, but
Yes.
video for sure over audio any day.
Yes. So let's talk now about your property card app. So tell us about that, Oliver. Where did you get the inspiration from, and what is it? What does it do?
My inspiration comes from the Monopoly board game,
Mm,
most played game in history, over a billion people, and there's a lot of smarts behind that game, and it replicates in many ways the way wealth is acquired in the real world, in terms of buying a few homes, then the hotels, having monopoly over a street or an area, and then charging rents when others visit and spend some time on your holdings. So it's a very cool game. It's very smart, and it teaches kids from a young age to think about wealth acquisition. And I was fascinated by it, and I wanted to turn every home in the world into a property card that looks like a Monopoly card. So I wanted to gamify, turn the Monopoly game into a business where every house in the world has its own property card, and you can claim it if you're the owner, and then you can start using services in it. You can list it for sale, list it for rent. You can store paperwork and documents. You can do inventory checks. You can pay rents and utilities, and you can do all these things inside your property card. And it's a bit fun and playful and gamified. So I see a major opportunity to create value and wealth, also to create lots of value for the users, and to give back so much to the economy and the community through this business, through various channels we could talk about. But I think it's a win on many fronts, and it's a business I've been planning for about 8, 9 years, and it's
mm,
taken 6, 7 years to set the foundation up for it. There's a lot
mhm.
of intense, like laborious tech work behind the
Yeah.
scenes to get all these homes ready, because there's no property app that's global right now except Airbnb, which is just rentals. But this is
Yes.
the one that's it does sales and lettings and documents and all these things in one place. That's why we call it a super app,
Ah,
because it does a lot in one.
so have you got a lot of blockchain in there, Oliver?
So
Is blockchain a part of it?
it is a part of it. It powers a lot of the back end and where some of the data is stored and where transactions in the future can be powered. It's still early days for all these applications, and we filed patents along a lot of these things, but that is a part of it. Lots of people throw these around as buzzwords today without real life application. We have actual application for the property sector, which is the largest sector in the world. One
Mhm.
third of all the money in the world is in our homes, and
Yes.
one third of all the cash flow that goes as transfers on a monthly basis through monthly spending is also in our homes. It's through rents, mortgages, and utilities. So
Mm.
money flowing in the world, if you were to track where it goes in and out of our houses.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
so this is the platform for that flow of cash, and we hope to be a main gateway in this space.
Which is just amazing. And tell me, Oliver, I mean, it does take a long time to build out these things. As you said, there's a huge amount of tech that has to go into it. So, have you received funding for that? Have you been bootstrapping it? How have you actually uh, progressed with all of that work?
we self-funded most of it and took some money from friends, family, and angels. I put some of the capital, and some friends and family put the rest. And we go live in July. So in July we will be open to all 195 countries from day one. All countries will be open, and we may attract significant more funding after that for growth and to push into market. But so far we bootstrapped it, and it's ready to go in July.
Which is amazing, really. I mean, it's just so exciting, Oliver, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that you're gamifying it as well, because people love to be entertained, don't they? I mean, it's of course they want to engage with apps that are useful and they do a good job. But if they can have a bit of fun along the way as well, then it just makes it so much more palatable and easier to use and more enjoyable, doesn't it?
It's so true. But another thing is that the UK, especially, half of the wealth of England is property, and the other half is pension.
Ah,
So it's a community of people that are obsessed with their homes.
yeah.
Everyone is on the ladder or rising, and it's true to make this gamified is a big part of it. Um, but not only that, the property sector currently it has a very big problem, which is it takes about 60 days or more to buy or sell a home, no
Mhm.
matter what the size or value of the house. It also takes that much or longer for a mortgage. So just to contrast, you can buy a car that is more expensive than the average home in England. You can buy it within the day and
Wow.
drive it off the lot. But the same priced house will take you 60 days. So it is extremely inefficient. And the reason for that is there's so many parties who double dip and they take their commissions, and you have to then get solicitors and then evaluation done, wait for the banks. There's so many parties, and it's just like a big spider web of mess and inefficiency. And I hope that I will live long enough that we can see property being bought and sold instantly within the day or even with a click, and that will mean that all the processes in between have to be automated and sorted out. But it's the hardest sector to untangle with the most opportunity that I see, and that's why I've dedicated, like back to what we started with, that to dedicate focus to one thing for a lifetime, and maybe you have a
Mhm.
chance to be at the top. This is the game I've chosen above all else. uh, this is the one I've dedicated my life to, and I hope that within our lifespan we will be able to buy and sell homes instantly, do mortgages instantly, where a refinance deal will come on your phone and it'll say there's a cheaper mortgage with HSBC. Would you like to refinance? It's a couple of clicks and you get the job done. So that's the direction of travel. It's going to take a lot of investment and support, and hopefully we can pull this off in the next decade, 2 decades.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really, incredible, and as you said, there is so much considering the speed of technology and all the innovation that is happening in general at the moment, it's a very backward sector, really, isn't it? And I don't really know why that is, but there just doesn't seem to be much change in terms of, as you said, the way that houses are bought and sold, and just the whole process seems to still rely on a lot of, manual or kinda low-tech transactions really, doesn't it?
You're completely right. Elon Musk's going to Mars, and we're going to be buying a house in 60 days. This doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense. And
yeah.
again, I think there's a lot of parties that are holding on to monopoly profits. Rightmove
Uh-huh.
is a monopoly in England. They bank 300 million in profit every year. There's no competitor. Zoopla is second, but by a long shot, and that's it. So every country has their main player, like Zillow in the States, Rhea in Australia. So and they dominate and monopolize the market, which is not efficient for the consumer. I mean, we learned this in economics in the
Yeah.
first chapter, that you need to open the market up to get the best for the consumer. That's not the case right now.
Yeah, well, personally, I can see that this thing could be absolutely huge, particularly if it's, global. I mean, it's gonna be massive, isn't it? Really?
It will be
Well,
enormous.
yeah. So Oliver, that's really exciting, and I just can't wait. So you're launching in July, and what's your plan for the rollout? How are you going to get the business into all of those countries? Are you going to start with one territory, or are you going to, have you got partners, or what's the plan, or is that all top secret?
So we're not revealing much, but we're speaking to rollout partners in various countries. I have a personal preference for the UK. I have for a long time. I love
Yeah.
the UK, and it's a beautiful property market to get started. Also geographically centered before going east and west. So we'll see how this plays out, but UK will be a focus for sure, and the US over time, definitely.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Oliver, it has been such a pleasure to speak to you today. Personally, I can't wait to see, the rollout of your exciting app. And I'm sure that people who have been watching or listening in will also be, if they have an interest in the property market, I'm sure they'll also want to find out more. So, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Um, I'm a bit private on socials, but you could send me an email at oliver@propertycard.com.
Yes.
That would be the best way.
Okay, okay. Well, Oliver, thank you so much for joining us today. It has just been the most fantastic interview. I've really enjoyed it, talking about boxing, chess, probability, success, and of course, your fantastic app. And I just wish you all the best with that and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Jane, pleasure has been all mine. I wish you all the best as well, and I love your show. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for having me.
You're welcome.